So good morning again, everybody, and welcome to the Life Info Day 2021 again. My name is Angelo Salsi. I'm the head of department in charge of the LIFE program, and I'm here with Christian Strasser, who is the head of unit in charge of the LIFE Energy and LIFE Climate unit. And we are going to browse you through very rapidly the essentials of the LIFE call and the LIFE program itself from 2021 and onwards. Next. So the new LIFE program, as you all know, we are a bit at the center of the Green Deal. Obviously, we are not the Green Deal, but everything we do is supportive to the Green Deal objectives. We are still the only EU program which is fully dedicated and specific for environment, nature conservation, and climate action, including energy efficiency. Our span of work now is 21-27, and we have a sizable increase as compared to the previous budget. We are now in the area of 5.4 billion euros. We are talking here about a call which is launched as part of the new and the first multi-annual program, which is currently being adopted while I'm talking. Next. The LIFE program does not change a lot as compared to the one that you know from the past. We are still in charge of a number of key objectives in terms of sustainability and quality of life, whether this is connected to climate change, circular economy, nature and biodiversity, but we have an important addition, which is the clean energy transition. We do try to reach these objectives through a number of tools, and we will be a bit more detailed in the coming slides. So we use projects mostly, and through the way of projects, we try to develop and demonstrate innovation, but also to implement best practice, supporting policy legislation. So we are clearly a typical program which is designed to make policy a reality on the ground. And we serve beneficiaries which have not changed very much from the past. So let's say overall, 1/3 of our beneficiaries are private commercial enterprises, 1/3 are NGO or non-profit, and 1/3 are public authorities. So the next. Getting a bit more into the details, the subprogram Nature and Biodiversity, this is an area which has been there since the start of LIFE, obviously. So 21st May 1992, LIFE regulation was adopted, and minutes after or minutes before, the Habitats Directive was adopted. And there was a one-to-one match between these two programs, and I think that LIFE Nature has made a big part of the success of the LIFE program. We are still there to try to help Europe to halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity. We support specifically the Natura 2000 network and the implementation of the prioritized action framework. And we try through the LIFE projects to mainstream nature and biodiversity in practically all other policy and economical sectors. Typical actions, classical projects on nature conservation in Natura 2000, species protection, managing alien species, ecosystem restoration, and much more. A nice addition, a nice reinforcement this year is the concept of projects aimed at the implementation of the prioritized action framework. And a nice addition instead, it's a mini sort of program within the main program dealing with the best projects in overseas countries and territories and in outermost regions. Next slide. Circular economy and quality of life is everything you can dream of about environment, which is not included in nature and biodiversity. And there you find chemicals, noise, soil, waste, and so on. We still do finance what we financed in the past in terms of projects implementation, but with a nice addition, which is that we are now not only bound to finance innovation and demonstration, but we can also finance best practice. So we do support public authorities and other stakeholders in implementation of the EU environmental acquis. We do support also SMEs and other companies, larger or medium size, to implement close to market projects. And we continue to finance what we call integrated projects dealing with air, waste, water, and now also circular economy. Next, and I pass the floor to Christian.
Yeah, welcome from my side too. I took up duties in the LIFE unit, in fact, now in CINEA on the 1st of April. CINEA is the agency implementing the LIFE program for the next seven years. And now to the sub-programs in my unit. We're managing two sub-programs, and one sub-program is climate mitigation and adaptation, which you probably know because that existed already in the previous program cycle. The purpose of this sub-program is the transformation of the European Union into a climate neutral and climate resilient society. And we have three areas here: climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation, and then related governance for that. There's also in this climate sub-program a strong, let's say, connection for activities related to energy efficiency and renewable energy, as far as this aspect is not covered by the fourth sub-program under the LIFE. And to the fourth program, I come on the next slide. The sub-program Clean Energy Transition. Clean Energy Transition turns around from building policy regulatory framework to rolling out of technologies, also private finance, mobilizing local regional investments, going to consumers, to citizens, empowering and engaging consumers and citizens. So these are the so-called intervention areas of the sub-program, which we can also read in the multi-annual work program. Much of the funds here are allocated to the so-called other actions, which with a funding rate of 95%. So these other actions are coordination and support actions, which we see again on the next slide. Here again, we see the areas of the interventions. These are the 5 areas of intervention. And I want to refer also to the recitals of the LIFE regulations. We have recital number 9 of the LIFE regulations, which mentions here multiple co-benefits in this program, in this sub-program, such as tackling energy poverty, improved indoor air quality, reducing local pollutants, and other benefits, all in all together to a more socially inclusive growth. Also worth to mention for this sub-program is recital 10, when it says the CET, the Clean Energy Transition sub-program, is not to fund excellence and generate innovation, but it is about to facilitate the uptake of already existing technologies for renewable energy and energy efficiency. So this uptake of existing research and innovation solutions comes on one hand from LIFE, but also in particular from Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe funded projects. And they have the potential for synergies between the various programs and to further increase the overall coherence of union funding. And I hand over again to Angelo.
Thanks, Christian. So next slide, please. So let's get back into the listing, if you want, of type of tools that we are going to use and put at your disposal. Under the form of grants, which is still the mainstream type of financing of LIFE, we have 2 big families: action grants and operating grants. So action grants are composed by standard action projects. If you want to use the terminology of the past, is what we used to call the traditional project. This is what has made the success of LIFE. These are bottom-up type of projects, so it's your ideas and not our, let's say, wishes necessarily. But your ideas, they most obviously fit into the logic of the LIFE program. The strategic nature projects are what we used to call in the past integrated project for nature, and the strategic integrated projects are what we used to call in the past integrated project for environment and climate. Then we have technical assistance, which is now a composite family on which Christian will give you a bit more details. And then we have other actions, which includes the coordination and support action, the CSA, typical of our energy efficiency part. Finally, we have the operating grants. These are grants that are dedicated to a non-profit organization. A bit more details in a coming slide. And on the right-hand side, you find another number of elements that we use under LIFE, procurement, prices, and blending. They are not part of the scope, so I will not bother you with the details about these kind of issues. Next. So the traditional projects, or the SAP, standard action projects, get used to this terminology because that's the new wave, at least for the next 7 years. As I said before, bottom-up approach. They are aimed to support the testing and the development and application of new ideas, whether these are fully innovative or just demonstrative. But now they're also able to finance, as they did in the past already for nature, but this across the board now, best practice implementation. They are projects that catalyze the successful technical solutions at a larger scale by way of replication. And so they do tons of different things. What you have to remember is that these projects are fully flexible. You design them the way they are fit for purpose. You have identified the problem. You know how big your shoulders are, and you know how much is needed to solve this problem. And therefore, you design the project. It's not up to us to tell us whether it's long, short, big, alone, or with many partners. The co-financing rate, there are some, let's say, good novelties as compared to the past edition. So we set a maximum co-financing rate at 60%. You will always ask less, obviously, and we will consider this when we evaluate if you want the value for money for your project. But we have another two possible rate of co-financing for nature and biodiversity, a 67% and a 75%. These are directly aimed at projects that focus on priority habitats and species. The nice addition is that now the list of priority habitats and species is much, much longer than it used to be in the past. And the in-between category, the 67, is when you have a project which is a mixture of priority and non-priority. And so there we go, we simply fall somewhere in the middle. The maximum duration of this project, this is a novelty of this round, but you shouldn't be worried, it's 10 years. Our statistics show that traditional projects, they never last more than 10 years. So that's not really an impediment, if you want, in the way you design them. Next slide. The SNAPs. So the old integrated projects for nature, they don't change habit and they don't change logic. We are still there to support the full implementation of the prioritized action frameworks. With a nice addition, you can connect to that also implementation of other strategies and plans that we might have adopted following the biodiversity strategy. Maximum co-financing rate is 60%, and the duration this time, the maximum duration is 14 years. Again, not a problem because the longest IP we had in the past was 10 years long. So the snaps of the future, they will change a bit in terms of distributional logic and size, but you will have more details later in the presentation that will come. Next slide. The SIPs, so the integrated projects for environment and climate of the past. Again, no major change. The logic is still the same. You have a plan, you have a strategy. This plan and strategy fits in one of the categories that we have defined that we want to support. And you want to run a project which is aimed at the full implementation of those plans and strategies, then you can get the money for a SIP. And the nice addition in the circular economy and quality of life is that we have added one category, which is circular economy, national or regional circular economy action plans and strategies. And you have a rather long list of plans and strategies that are enabling you to design a SIP for the climate change mitigation and adaptation area, where you see energy pops out quite visibly. Next slide. This is also the last one for my part of the presentation, the NGOs operating grants. This is a family of grants, rather limited. We are in the 30-40 grant per year, where we do support NGOs that are active at European level. So we're not talking about purely regional or local or national NGOs. And it has been there for a long time. We have modified a bit the narrative behind, in particular the mechanics. Now we're going to go for framework partnership agreement that binds us with the NGO for at least 3 years in the first round. So more security, long-term security of financing. The rate of co-financing doesn't change. And later on, we will sign for each of these framework partnership agreement, specific grant agreements, which will last 1 year, because that's the way they are set up in the financial regulation. This is my last slide, and I wish you good luck, and I pass the floor again to Christian.
Thank you, Angelo. And the next slide is now referring to technical assistance projects, the so-called TA projects. We have a different kind of them. We have the technical assistance projects for the preparation of SNAPs and SIPs. So these are in the previous programming period, the technical assistance, the maximum co-funding has been slightly decreased from 100,000 euros to 7,000 euros, but they appear again, in fact, in this program period. We aim here to work with lump sums to be further developed, but here a simplification is on the way. We have also under technical assistance projects the capacity building for member states. Again, here, similar to previous program, this is in fact, the aim is to help and support member states with a low effective participation in the program, considering the elements of number of proposals submitted to in the relevant call and the related success rate. Here for the capacity building, we have one project per country. We are just identifying the countries which are eligible. This will be some 18 to 19 countries. The duration of all technical assistance projects will be maximum 5 years. Co-funding rate here is also quite high, 95% for this for member states. The next slides, we see then other action grants. The other action grants are, in fact, as I said before, the main element for the clean energy transition sub-program. And there are some other areas, like mentioned before by Angelo, a small grant facility on biodiversity, the so-called previous best program under LIFE, with small grants up to 100,000 euros, but co-funding rate up to 100%. We have also here some action grants benefiting the organizations mentioned in the program, in the regulation already. Also here, co-funding rate is 95% maximum. And again, except the small grant facility and biodiversity with 100%. The next slide shows us, in fact, again here the CSAs. Again here a reference to the clean energy transition sub-programs. CSAs is the abbreviation for coordination and support actions. They are the standard type of grants for the CET sub-program. And here the orientation is breaking market barriers to the clean energy transition. What is hampering, in fact, the transition? This is capacity building, dissemination of information and knowledge and awareness raising. This is very much policy driven. They are prescriptive call topics, which will have been published with the call. They are not a new element, in fact, in the support scheme from those who already were used to participate in the sub-program under previous Horizon 2020. But it is a different approach compared to the usual bottom-up approach of activities under the LIFE program. So this sub-program, in particular, these other action grants are very much, let's say, top-down, policy-driven with prescriptive core topics. So the area is, in fact, engagement of multiple stakeholders and large transnational consortiums, and also EU-widely validated results feeding into policy making. Funding rate very high, 95% here. The duration is shorter, between 18 and 36 months. What is to be kept as well, there are no infrastructure costs eligible there. It's mainly orientated to labor costs, and that, in fact, is in line with the activities we want to fund here. So, and by referring to these other action grants, to the coordination and support actions, I come to the end of our presentation, which gave you an outline of the structure of the new LIFE program. We thank you for your attention.